Nashville's huge, right? They've got a huge Bitcoin scene here. But the Nashville mayor ran under like a Bitcoin umbrella. Like if you were Kamala Harris, why wouldn't you want to be at someplace like this unless you're worried about embarrassing yourself?
Yeah.
You know,
she probably is not educated on the issues, doesn't understand it. And you know, I think David Bailey, who's the head of this whole operation, I think he reported that somebody told him that she said that's just money for criminals.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, that's hearsay. We don't know for sure. Hopefully she will pivot on that or educate herself on that matter.
Who knows, man?
In similar fashion to how Trump sort of became more educated on the issue and understood it more. And hopefully she will as well.
Everybody's just realizing how powerful this tool is and how powerful Bitcoiners as a community are. Yeah, so I mean, RFK is tomorrow. I think he's like later in the afternoon. I don't know if Snowden is tomorrow too. I heard Snowden might be leading RFK too, so that's going to be a good one.
Yeah. We need him pardoned as well. I mean, it's ridiculous. The fraud and corruption behind all this and how unfair and unjust this is just unfathomable.
Yeah.
You know, the founding fathers would be absolutely disgusted. And you know, we're going to say it, Bitcoin fixes this.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a common thing. Bitcoin fixes this, right? It realigns the incentives to not be able to endlessly print for wars. Hey, we're at Industry Day, the first day of the Bitcoin conference here in Nashville. I'm Matty, the CEO of Consensus Protocol, and I'm here with my friend Brandon Keys, the CEO of GreenCandle.
Let's do it. Let's get into it, man.
Brandon, what stood out to you so far?
Yeah, so day one is Industry Day, so it is always a little unique coming here a little bit earlier, kind of seeing all the booths set up, everybody kind of seeing it. But I'm just seeing the buzz around the city. I mean, I've been talking to my Uber drivers. They're like, oh, everybody coming in for the conference, super nice. Very generous. Everybody's going to all these different events. There's so much going on. It's almost like overwhelming. There's like so many. We were talking a little bit like, what are you going to do tonight? There's like 17 different events. So there's a little bit of everything for everybody. And I think, just that entire aspect of that is awesome, right? I mean, we got 20,000 plus people coming in for this Bitcoin conference. We got Trump speaking on Saturday, RFK tomorrow, Snowden, Vivek. Like, we have presidential candidates coming here,
This movement is growing, and more people are waking up. And, it's a testament to the power that Bitcoin has and the staying power for a totally globally decentralized monetary system. And, the industry that it brings to a city, the vibrancy and the economy and the tourism and all of that is you can see it here. I mean, we went to a steak restaurant the other night, Hal's, and they kept the kitchen open late because they knew the conference was going to be here. And we showed up at, I think really late at like 11, and they usually close the kitchen at 11, but they kept it open till 12 because, they wanted to accommodate all of the guests and people that were coming for the Bitcoin conference. So there's a lot of value here to being a pro Bitcoin candidate and a pro Web3 candidate. So like testament to what you just said, we're seeing a lot of politicians actively engage, right? So it's been a rough 4 years for the industry with all of the attacks coming from the current administration. And it's sad that Kamala Harris is not going to attend the conference because she did have an opportunity to sort of reset the script and differentiate herself from the Biden administration on that front. But it's good that we have Donald Trump now learning more about Bitcoin, and RFK Jr., who was watching him speak last year at the conference, extremely educated on the matter, and knows exactly what he's talking about. I'm very curious to see Trump and see what he's learned, and you can kind of watch his evolution as he learns more and more about the industry and sees the value proposition and talks to more people. It mirrors a lot of transitions and acceptance and learning that I've seen with many other people, just in my life, whether elder people in my life, boomers, parents, grandparents, elderly people. They sort of are very skeptical at first, which is that always should be the default position, right? So it's no big surprise that any of these people are skeptical, right? If you don't educate yourself and learn, you should be skeptical of something like this, right? What is this magic internet money? What is this going on here, right? So skepticism is always good at first, and then as you learn more, your understanding grows, right? We've seen this with many, many individuals when it comes to Bitcoin, whether it's Larry Fink, whether it's Michael Saylor, or many people, question things initially and learn and educate, right? Mm-hmm. Information is the key, right?
100%, yeah, and I mean, I think that that's going to continue to grow. I mean, I think bringing on JD Vance for
Hmm.
Trump is going to be absolutely huge. I mean, I think that's just a testament of what is going on, right? I mean, a lot of Bitcoiners that's their single issue voters, and it's
Right.
almost
Yeah.
like at a
Yeah.
point, so they're realizing kind of the power of this industry
Hmm.
and the power that brings, like kind of backing it all, right? I mean, we said there's like 20,000 plus people here. That could be a big chunk of people, and not even all of them are like all Bitcoiners across the U.S. are even here attending, right? I
Hmm.
mean, a lot of them
Absolutely.
watching online, a lot of them catching content like this
Hmm.
from all that. So just kind of seeing what's gonna come of it. I know, Senator Cynthia Lummis has been kind of a growing proponent of the Bitcoin space for quite some
She's been
time.
fantastic.
Yeah, she actually, I think she tweeted out like maybe a day or two ago that they're proposing the bill to bring Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset for the U.S.
Hmm.
There's been rumors of that, hasn't been confirmed yet,
Yeah.
but we'll see if Trump actually kind of goes through with that.
That
So
would
I
be
mean,
amazing, right?
that's a game changer
And
right there, man.
from a
That's
game theoretical perspective, I mean, that just makes sense, right? So I think some of the speakers today even touched on that. We were watching one of the Metaplanet president and the Semler Scientific CEO and somebody that also works for MicroStrategy, and they were kind of discussing some of this. And the talk before that as well was discussing some of this. Um, it just makes sense. I think it might have been the the person who was working for somebody from Riot or somebody from who was working for the government in Dubai talking about this idea of adding, the government already holds many things, right? It has a strategic oil reserve, strategic medical supplies, it has strategic gold supplies, right? So it makes sense to add, the analog version of the digital version of gold, right, to the balance sheet. As just another treasury reserve asset, right? And the interesting part is the good start would be just you've confiscated coins from whatever,
yeah.
right? Just keep those coins, right? I think the U.S. is number one, has the most Bitcoin of any country right now. Why sell that? Just hold it. I mean, it costs you nothing. It's not costing anything. It's not doing anything. You know, I would love to see in the future an active policy of accumulating in the market, right? So I think there's major geopolitical, things at play, right? A big sort of game theoretical play on China, because China is accumulating so much gold, I think would be for the U.S. to say, hey, we're going to accumulate Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
China didn't see that coming on their 100-year, their 100-year long-term plan that they do, right? That's communist controlled. They've got this whole thing going. Hey, we've got a constitutional republic here, and hey, we're going to adapt to what's happening, what's changing. I think that would be a very wise decision, right? And it really costs not much. So a lot of it, I'm extremely interested to see. I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest Bitcoin conferences. I mean, every year they sort of outdo themselves, right? They've learned so much, and they've done a great job putting on excellent conferences. But I think this year really takes the case with people like RFK Jr. and Trump headlining this conference, right? So I'm excited to see what happens, right? History will be made, whether it's with Nayib Bukele announcing that Bitcoin was going to be legal tender in El Salvador, and so many other amazing announcements that have come from this conference every year. I'm looking forward to it. What else are you excited about?
No, 100%. I mean, you got to think about it, right? I mean, this 2024 might be the biggest year in Bitcoin's history. I mean, we had 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs being released out there with now access to traditional finance. We're having other companies outside of MicroStrategy, which you just named, putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And I think that that's going to become more commonplace. And now potentially we have the US using it as a strategic reserve asset. Like all of that, 15 years in, are you kidding me? Like, what's not to be bullish about at this point?
I mean, the best performing asset in all of human history is Bitcoin, right? And there's a reason for that, and there's a fundamentals underlying this network. This, limited scarcity, the fungibility, divisibility, portability, all these key aspects that enable Bitcoin to be what it is, right? That make it this neutral money, this global money that anybody can plug into, right? This sort of combats this idea of, and we're seeing a lot of this right now in this age of digital authoritarianism. And the Cypherpunk'd, a group of cryptographers and privacy activists, this was largely predicted. A lot of what's happening today, the financial censorship, and as a tool, the monopolar world that we live in right now, with the U.S. exerting sanctions and all these things, nobody wants to have their reserves and be at the whims of an adversarial political power, and that's just a fact, right?
Yeah.
And even so, these tools, in my personal opinion, sanctions, all of these things, they're kind of like a one-trick pony. You get one shot at it, and then these other countries are going to move to something else, use something else.
Yeah.
They don't want to be subjected to that control, and it ends up just hurting the people, like so many of just the innocent poor people that live in a lot of these authoritarian areas, right? So you're not actually hurting that dictator who has a bunch of Lambos and can do whatever he wants and has 100 people working for him, right? You're not hurting them. You're just hurting all of the people, the population, right? The average people that are just trying to get by and have a living, right? So Bitcoin is a tool to combat that, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think Bitcoin is inevitable as well, right? And it's money for everybody, enemies included, anybody, right? It's a tool for the woman who's trying to leave an abusive relationship, or the woman who's trying to leave an abusive regime, or flee a genocide, or flee a war, or take her purchasing power with her wherever she's going. So, and there's been so many examples of that. So Bitcoin really is for everybody. And I think that's an important thing. And hopefully we can get both sides of the political aisle behind that. And Bitcoin is so many different things to so many different people, right? It's a store of value. It's a medium of exchange. It is all of these different things. Reserve asset, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just continuing to grow. And I think like the development aspect in all different areas is going to continue, right? Whether it's the innovation in mining, we were talking about, some of my friends at Cardiff at BTC, they're, developing a way to utilize cow manure to mine Bitcoin. That sounds crazy. But I mean, it's all these things are popping up, right? The development of the Lightning Network kind of getting more robust with that. We got like Fedi mints and other things kind of popping up, peer-to-peer transactions to help with all that stuff that you just listed out there, right? So I think that the continued innovation, the continued awareness, and just the more touch points that people are getting, right? I mean, BlackRock, the biggest money manager in the world, launching an ETF, Trump talking about it, and it's like, we get athletes, we get pop culture, Russell Brand's even here, right? Amazing, I mean, right? Hell, I love forgetting Sarah Marshall, right? I mean, it's a great movie. So
it's a funny story. I hated him for so long because I couldn't separate him from that character in the TV show. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I fucking hate this. I'm like, why do I hate this guy? And I'm like, and it finally dawned on me. It was like, he's such a fucking good actor that he actually made me hate him because of how well he played that character in that movie. So I was like, oh my God. And then I listened to him talking and I'm like, this guy's cool as fuck. He's his own person. He's an individual. I love people like that where it's like, we may not agree on everything, but like, you're your own fucking person and you're thinking for yourself. So kudos to him, and hopefully we can run into him here.
Yeah, get him to the Greek too. Another good one where he plays that role. He plays the heel a little bit, right? So I mean, he is really good at that. But I mean, it's almost like he's playing the heel on the traditional systems now, right? Because that's why he's kind of rebelling and being in the Bitcoin space. So it's always good to get people like that in the space because you never know, man. You might have a big Russell Brand fan who's just watches all of his movies and now they're curious about Bitcoin because he's speaking here. So all these kind of things, the different kind of touch points that people are getting, it's all going to be good for Bitcoin in the end, no matter what you think, right? The more that awareness and media attention and all that kind of stuff that happens, I think, in the end, I mean, I think the difference there.
It's sad that it has to be such a partisan issue.
I mean, but the difference that I've seen, right, is like obviously RFK was kind of the first major one that's come out there, but Trump has always been kind of like, I don't really know too much about Bitcoin. Like the only thing that he did say like a while ago was I don't like Bitcoin because he sees it as a currency and an attack on the US dollar, which I mean, it is, right?
In some ways,
and so at that, like he recognized it as a currency this entire time. Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party never has really been friendly to Bitcoin or crypto as a whole. We've had the Elizabeth Warrens. Maybe she's an anomaly in that party, but it's been kind of a dividing line, it seems, at some point. So, it'll be nice.
There's some Democratic politicians that have been great, right?
Of course,
There's a new one in Virginia. There's, I think, Ron Wyden. There's Kristen Sinema. There's people that I believe have differentiated themselves. But I do think that at this point it just is a partisan issue at this point. Mostly, it really seems that the right side of the aisle has really embraced the innovation, the technology, all of those things, and the left has really they don't like this aspect that people can be free to transact and do things. There's like this sort of authoritarian paternalism there, and we see that with people like Gary Gensler. We see that and again this with Choke Point 2.0 and the debanking of all these crypto companies. That's really been reflected in this unconstitutional policy by the Biden admin and the CFTC and the the administration as a whole. And it's sad to see, it really is. But I think it's time for a change here for the next 4 years, and see what we can usher in, right? I think Trump recognized that, hey, there's innovation, money, business, jobs, all of that. I think that is what's clicking for him, even though he might not be full on Bitcoiner, like totally understand all of the intricacies and the game theory and all of those things. But having people that have come and sort of orange pilled him, with Vivek Ramaswamy probably initiating that, him utilizing multiple NFT collections. I think he did a Bitcoin Ordinals collection. He did a Ethereum NFT collection. So I think he's seeing some of the use cases of the technology. You watch that growth there of it starting to click, like, okay, there's some interesting things here that I've never experienced before. And then ultimately when the miners went to talk to him and pitch him on, hey, there's jobs to be made here, there's investment to be made here, there is grid management tools here, we can let's mine the Bitcoin here, right? And everybody all over the world, whether it's Trump or any leader of any other nation, they should be doing the same thing, right? Yeah. Hey, we want the Bitcoin mined here, right? We want innovation here. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's everybody should want the Bitcoin mined there, and that is part of the game theory of the system, right? Because there's a financial incentive, there's jobs, there's great synergies with electricity companies and grid operators, because Bitcoin is such a super flexible load, right? We, as our mining company, we participate. We had a curtailment event last week with, a lot of our power. We had to shut down megawatts of power, and we shut down for 6 hours, and we were on Duke Energy's grid, and at this site, and we participate in this curtailment program. There was an emergency, it was super hot or whatever, we can shut down, no big deal. Let send that power to the hospital that needs it or wherever, and then when the emergency is resolved and you need customers to pay, we're right back there, paying you 24/7 to support this global decentralized monetary network. And in addition to that, provide a business incentive to these different grid operators, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's super important. And every city, like major city, has some sort of renewable energy source that they could be utilizing to do this, right? And you got to think, right? A lot of government jobs, like the government right now has just a spending problem. So how are we going to get out of debt? We can put Bitcoin as a reserve asset on the balance sheet, but also the government could start mining Bitcoin. And same with like local jurisdictions. We could get Naples, we could get Tampa on board, utilizing the water there, doing something to mine the Bitcoin, and then hell, you don't even need to tax the residents at that point. Eventually that could be, maybe a utopian future. maybe I'm super hopeful.
You're super hopeful.
Yeah, but I mean, at least like help out building city structures, so it's not just like the same kind of people coming in and just putting up the same.
What you just described, I think, is like somebody said this today. I think this was also the guy from Riot in one of his talks. He said, you go to DC, they say, why should we let you do this? You go to Texas, they say, how can we help you do this, right? I think that's the difference right now, the clear difference in the two political parties that I've seen at large. If you just take things into, obviously there's individuals that have their own opinions on each side, but if you look at it as a whole, that's the two differentiations right now, which,
but I mean, I think that there's going to be a shift in the tide there too, because what's another business that's popping up and that's super booming right now is AI, right? And what are they going to need? They're going to need data centers, right? So like at a certain point, I think we're going to see other countries come in. I know Maya, she's running for president of Suriname. She wants to be a leader in the Bitcoin mining and energy space. And like all these other countries are going to start doing it. And the U.S., come on, man. I mean, we're not going to be far behind if we are at all. And I think, right now we're a leader in the Bitcoin mining space as far as like hash rate in the entire world. I think that's going to continue.
I hope so.
Because we have states that like Texas, like Wyoming, like some of these others that are, absolutely for it. And I think, the way that the U.S. is designed, a lot of the states have a lot of power. And I think like more and more of these politicians are going to realize, hey, like, a local government, I'm not going to really get elected because people just don't come out except for their friends, family, whatever, maybe a few. But if I get behind Bitcoin, we'll have like, I don't know, however many in the meetups in the local area. Like Nashville's huge, right? They've got a huge Bitcoin scene here. If the Nashville mayor ran under like a Bitcoin umbrella or something like that, that would probably swing his vote that way or her vote that way. Same thing with different cities like that have these circular economies growing in each of these cities. So as much as we kind of start, infiltrating the politicians and getting that way, we're going to get favorable rulings and favorable things. And in the end, I think, as an American, Americans around the country want us to still remain the power that we are, love the country, and continue the growth here. And they don't want to see the the empire start to fall, right? So what can we do with that? We can start to implement like a Bitcoin standard, or putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet is
I think that's a good start, right?
Yeah,
like let's the Bitcoin that they've seized from whatever that they already have, like just don't sell that. That's a start, right? Hey, we're adding this strategically to our reserves. That's a start. Right.
And then use that to pay off the debt. Then maybe we'll we'll get back there. I mean, the never-ending debt that just keeps on piling on.
I mean, that's when they have the power to print, essentially steal from the population by debasing the currency. I mean, that's they're going to use that power, right? It's 100% politically popular power. If you study Austrian economics, and that was one of the big arguments that Friedrich Hayek had with John Maynard Keynes, was that Keynes said, hey, the government can be kind of counter-cyclical, right? When needed, we can print. When not needed, we can pull off the gas there, and we invest that money in society when you're in a downturn or whatever. But the issue that Friedrich Hayek pointed out was that whoever's in power is always going to want to just pump money, right? Yeah. They're not ever going to want to take their foot off the gas.
Oh, 100%.
He was largely proven right. So we've sort of reinflated bubble after bubble after bubble after bubble after bubble. And it's very interesting. Very interesting to
history repeats itself, man. History repeats itself. And unfortunately, it's only written by the winners. So like we don't know the full detail of everything though, well, but I mean,
John Maynard Keynes was the winner when it came to the economic policy discussions.
Exactly.
Earlier on in the creation of earlier on in the past century, right? So his ideas where we can just print money, we can do something to get out of this problem, was more politically popular than, hey,
of course,
let things work themselves out. Sometimes you're making a situation worse. So that was the tough pill to swallow that Friedrich Hayek had, and obviously that was not popular with all the politicians.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
You always want to look like you're doing something, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's
sometimes inaction is the best action, right?
Exactly,
I mean,
right?
but
we saw
hey,
this largely with COVID in a lot of ways too. But that's just one example of things, right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's how things are going to continue to go, right? They're never going to. They've gotten the drug of the money printer at this point, right? They started in 2008.
Well, that ship has sailed, right? So.
Yeah, they started in 2008. They did it again in 2020. If things start to show some cracks here again here soon, what's going to happen? The floodgates are open.
It's
brother.
inevitable. It's inevitable, right?
It's coming, right? So, it's the gradually then suddenly that Parker Lewis talks about, right? We're kind of like slowly peaking up, and people always speak about the volatility of Bitcoin and kind of that exchange rate. Like why would it be smart for somebody to necessarily hold Bitcoin or a country to hold Bitcoin when they don't realize like Bitcoin, we know how much is going to be mined every single day.
Yeah.
We know how there's a fixed supply.
There's something fundamentally truly fair about that I think that people really, obviously Bitcoiners can sort of grasp that idea, but the average Joe who now is, the poorest person, like the poorest people in our society now are suffering from massive inflation from all the money printing. And they are, unfortunately, the people that are affected the most by the government sort of stealing that purchasing power by just printing all that money, because they're the last people to actually access that money and spend that money in the economy. And now your rent's up 40% forever, 30% forever, and your paycheck has not really risen to the paychecks are like the last thing to rise, right? So you might have got your little stimulus check for $1,200, but now your rent is $1,200 more every month,
exactly.
Right? So it's like this, it's almost like a drug, right? Where you inject it and it feels good at first, and then, holy shit, I'm coming off of it. I got to deal with the consequences of this. And that's very observable. I mean, anybody can observe that, right? And see that happen in society.
100%. Yeah. And nothing in life is free, right? Healthcare is never free. Yeah. All these things, the money's coming from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It's mostly just the fixed cost that you don't see, right? Yep. So, like all these things, the stimmy checks, all that, when people are dumping money, you're going to pay for it later. If you don't live in the U.S. and you have free healthcare, you're getting taxed way more than we are out here, right? I mean, it's just like, it's the balance effect that you got to play with when essentially, like, it's
the poorest in society don't really understand. A lot of poor people are less educated. They don't understand what's actually happening behind the scenes with quantitative easing, and money printing, and stimulus, all this stuff. These fancy words that these central bankers throw out there. That is essentially, hey, we're printing money and we're giving it to the wealthiest people first. All these big banks, they're going to lend it out, and money's going to trickle through society, right? Like the Cantillon effect was another rabbit hole we could go down. But there's something very fair about how Bitcoin works. Like anybody can look at the code and see exactly when roughly all these coins are going to be released and at what rate, what the inflation rate is going to be. And then everybody has the fair advantage and doesn't have to just depend on the whims of a bunch of people in a room that just decide how they're going to centrally plan the control and flow of money, right? Like, it's so silly. Like, we don't centrally plan anything else in society. Like, we don't centrally plan. We realize how stupid and what a failure communism is. Yet, essentially, the way we operate with the most basic good in society, which is money, we are essentially communists with money. It just blows my mind, right? So
yeah, and I mean, like, if you kind of look at it from an outsider's or another lens, right? Is like fiat essentially encourages chaos because who makes money in wars or in pandemics?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's all the people who have inside information, know these things are coming first. Like the defense companies will always profit in war, right? I mean, in the pandemic, we just saw Pfizer, who was the largest.
Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Just follow the money trail. Yeah. You'll see it. And so with the fixed supply of Bitcoin and everybody having the same opportunity, hopefully, fingers crossed, that would encourage less of this chaos because we just simply wouldn't be able to afford to go to all of these
things would have to make sense. It'd have to be, there wouldn't be just endless money printing to fund wars, which was the first detachment for World War I, right? World War I was not politically popular. Franz Ferdinand, these people over in Europe, most of these people can't even point to those countries on a map. Most Americans are like, why the hell would we get involved with that, right? And in order to get involved with that, right, they had to detach from the gold standard to basically reduce how much gold was backing the dollar, right? So essentially, that was the first whole event of printing money to fund a war, a politically unpopular war. The only way that it could be funded was by debasing the dollar initially, and then the formation of the central bank and all this stuff. And it's fascinating rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah, but, I mean, definitely some wormholes to
a lot
fall
of
down
wormholes,
to
a lot of wormholes.
For sure. Yeah,
but, I'm happy to be here at the Bitcoin conference. Is there anything you're excited about for tomorrow?
Yeah, so I mean, RFK is tomorrow. I think he's like later in the afternoon. I don't know if Snowden is tomorrow too. I heard Snowden might be leading RFK too, so that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, we need him pardoned as well. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Amen.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Amen. Yeah,
he
so
basically exposed that the fact that public officials are, the NSA, whoever is spying and violating the Constitution against the private citizens of the United States. The founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves. By what's been going on.
The founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves if they saw how much we're getting taxed these days. I mean,
they revolted over a couple percentage of a tax, and now it's like, you get sales tax, you got property tax, you got, you turn around, you got some money that was already taxed, and then you pay somebody else that's taxed again. I mean, it's like, crazy income tax, state income tax, federal income tax. I mean, this is absurd.
Yeah,
right? Absurd.
I mean,
and they're printing money at the same time.
Yeah,
it's like the fraud and corruption behind all this and how unfair and unjust this is just unfathomable.
Yeah,
the founding fathers would be absolutely disgusted. I'm going to say it. Bitcoin fixes this.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a common thing. Bitcoin fixes this, right? It realigns the incentives to not be able to endlessly print for wars. It realigns the incentives around tax, right? So there's another idea of taxes and inflation that, as you inflate the money supply, the same tax rate is actually more. And Friedrich Hayek talks about this. It perverses, accounting books, because now things you're looking like you did better than you really were.
Yeah.
And now you're in a higher tax rate with the same amount of purchasing power. Now it looks like it's more money because you've inflated the supply. So that same amount of dollars, now to be equal, it sort of adjusts you up a tax rate. So
100%.
It's another way for them to increase their coffers that way. It's unbelievable. I don't know how civilization and society even functions, but yet here we are today at this wonderful conference, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, but hopefully, I mean, we have a bright orange future in front of us here. So, great stuff ahead. I'm really excited for everything that's going on in this conference. And, man, let's go watch some fights, dude.
Yeah,
let's go watch some fights.
Good luck, Nick. We're rooting for you today.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.